This is a quick overview on how to play Mekkablood. Before getting into the details of how exactly to play, the overall goal is to use resources to build buildings. The buildings, along with additional resources, allow you to build mechs, apply upgrades, build action mechs, build custom mechs, repair your mechs, build walls, and other various actions. The main goal is to destroy your opponent's base. It is advised to use pen and paper, 10-sided dice, or a digital device to help keep track of the current status of each card. The cards that exist in this game are your base, buildings, mechs, action mechs, custom mechs, wall cards, and resource cards, and upgrades. I'll explain what each does later on. On your left, you have your main deck, your resource deck, and your wall custom mech deck. So, right here, it's your main deck, it's your resource deck, and that's for your walls / custom mechs. These consist of cards that can be from outside of the game. I'll explain more of that later. You can use regular cards for custom mechs and walls. It doesn't have to be the pre-made cards specifically for this game, because there is times where you may use a lot of them and have to use additional cards. To the left of your main deck is your wreckage pile. That would be that right there. When your mechs, buildings, and custom mechs are destroyed, they will initially go there. Above that is your waste pile, right there. All other cards go there when destroyed. Example, action mechs, upgrades, and wreckage that has been used. I'll explain more about these later. The first turn is decided by a coin flip. The winner decides if they want to go first or second. Prior to playing, both players must lay down their base card. The goal of the game is again to destroy your opponent's base. Here's your base card right there. Each player must shuffle their main decks and allow opponents to shuffle or cut the deck as well. The resource deck does not need to be shuffled. Again, that's that here. You can put it in any order you want. Your main deck can have up to 3 of any particular card. Your resource deck can have whatever basic resources you want in any order you want. Radioactive resources, which are not in the game yet, can only have 3 in the resource pile, 3 of each. 42 cards are in your main deck and 20 in your resource deck. Your wall custom mech deck can be any size that you want, and again, you can use cards that are outside of the game. I would just suggest, using something that's kind of a similar thing, like if you were using custom mech cards, maybe make them all spades or hearts or something like that if you're using regular cards to fill that in. Same with walls. I would just suggest using some sort of semblance of some consistency in what you're using for each thing, so that people can decipher what exactly that card is for. But if you're using pen and paper, dice, whatever, that should clear that up anyways. Basically, those cards just work like proxies work in other games. The player going first will draw 2 hands of 8 cards. I've already got this hand here, so we're not going to do that. Show you that real quick. I'm going to take that off the battlefield real quick, and we'll talk more about that in a second. So the player going first will draw 2 hands of 8 cards and decide which one they like. Then shuffle the other hand into the main deck. The opposing player can also again shuffle or cut the deck. The player going second does the same thing with 9 cards. Again, the player going first could then, shuffle or cut their deck. The player going first then draws their first card, then draws and lays down a resource card. So we'll go ahead and lay down a resource card. We're going to forget the draw on the main deck right now. I've got the hand that I want to use for examples. All right, so after you draw your first card and then you lay down your resource card, bada bang right there. At this point, the opponent has a chance to respond with any action, an action mech card, or an upgrade. So an action is just referred to the text on a card. So basically, if you're doing, an ability that's on the text of a card, you're doing an action. That's what that means. All right, since this is the first turn, there's nothing, for the opponent to respond, and we're just showing you this as an example anyways. From here, the player going first can use their resource. At this point, the most common use would be to build a building. This is a factory, for example. Let's pull this out of here. Here you go. And this will allow you to build mechs. So let's read this real quick. I know my autofocus doesn't really work on the webcam here. So on the top, to the left here, it says Red Factory 1, Level 1. Then in the middle, it says S2 15. So S refers to the amount of shields it has, and that 15, which is the number you always see after that, will always be the amount of armor on a building. Then you've got to the right, the cost. So this cost 1R. There's R, then there's G, then there's B. It's just, red for R, green for G, and blue for blue. Or B for blue. So also, if you'll see like an asterisk, you'll see like C1 red or 1R, and then like 5. This card doesn't have it, but let's say it did. Then it has 5, then an asterisk. That means you can use any color of resources to build this. The actual text on the card says, must be upkept for 1 red resource at the start of your turn. I'll explain more about that later. Builds a 1/1 mech. That's a mech with 1 power and 1 armor. No shields. With no shield for 1 red resource. Costs 2 red resources to morph into a level 2 factory. Once leveled, we'll create 1/1/2 ship, so that's 1 power, 2 armor. For 1 red resource, the building will have 18 health now. And sometimes I put ship on the card, I just mean mechs. There was going to be ships added. Right now, we're not having the game. So anytime it says ship, it just means a mech. Alright, so we'll lay that right there. Oh, also, forgot the bottom right-hand corner. Down there, it says W12. That refers to the amount of wreckage points that is on this. And we will explain more of that later. Basically, when this is destroyed, it goes to your wreckage pile, and then you can use the wreckage points with various actions. Also, we were just talking about turning this into level 2. It regains all shields and full armor. So say somebody has, got this down to half health, knocked their shield out on it. When it turns into level 2, that, which is considered an action, will give you full health and then full shield amount. The 3 main type of buildings you have are factories, such as that. Barracks are the same thing if referenced on a card. So if you see a card reference barracks, that's it's the same thing as a factory. So some cards will be called factories, some will be barracks, but it's the same thing. The second is repair facilities, which are required for some mechs, some action mechs, etc. But also they repair the mechs and buildings and build walls. Research centers are also used to build a variety of cards and will provide their own buffs. So as the main buildings you have a factory / barracks. You'll usually see them listed as factories. You have, again, your repair facilities, and then you also have your research centers. Factories and research centers will typically have upkeeps that are displayed on the card. As you saw when I was reading this, it said the very first thing it says is must be upkept for 1 red resource at the start of your turn. So that means whatever you do, like when it's your turn, the very first thing you have to do before you draw any cards is you have to pay that resource cost. So it's just 1. That's, research centers and factories are like that. Now, if you do not pay that at the beginning of your turn, then this is automatically goes into your wreckage pile. So you got to make sure to pay that at every start of every one of your turns. Card rules can override these rules. So anything I'm saying here, if a card contradicts that with its wording, you follow the card's wording as opposed to the rules. And again, anytime you do an action, I don't remember if I mentioned this before or not. An action is what's set on a card or a action mech card or an upgrade. Your opponent always has a chance to respond by doing the same thing. The only thing you can't do when you're on your turn is lay down buildings or mechs, regular mechs. I'll explain more the difference between mechs, action mechs, and custom mechs. Before we get to combat, let's do a few rounds in advance to show you the way you'll be building your army. Now that we have a factory down, let's put a mech on the battlefield. Alright, so move that up, do it like this. So it doesn't really matter like how exactly you do your layout. For the battlefield, it's up to your discretion. I would just make it something easy to access for both parties. All right, well, let's read this mech card real quick here. Again, you're not going to be able to read it due to the lack of autofocus, but it's got its name. It's Stinger 1. So the names on these mech cards are in reference to their abilities, if they do similar abilities. So there might be like a Stinger 2, Stinger 3, etc. So you can kind of understand what the mech is doing by that. I wanted to do it that way, not out of laziness actually, but for cataloging purposes. So if like there's a certain mechanic you like, you can look for, I'm going to look at all the different Stinger cards. Then you've got a cost here, which is 1 red, 2 any. So, we didn't pay the cost, I'm just showing you for example purposes, but you would need to have 3 resources laid down to build this. All right. And then the text that says requires a level 1 factory, 1R does 3 damage to any target. So when you're able to do actions, you can do a 1 red, will do 3 damage to any target you want. If that target has a shield on it, then that shield absorbs all the damage and it takes out that shield. This particular mech has shield, 0 shields, 5 power, and 5 armor. That's displayed here on the bottom left. And then its wreckage amount is 6 on the right. So we got that down there. All right, now we'll show you the other buildings. For example, this is a repair facility. And here's a research center. So the layout's going to be the same as the other buildings. You've got your name up here, your resource cost to the right, and in the middle is the amount of shield plus armor. And then this will tell you a variety of things of what it does. I'll just read this one real quick. 1 resource or 4 wreckage repairs 2 damage. 1 red or 4 wreckage turn into level 2. Once level 2, 1 resource or 3 wreckage repairs 4 damage and can be used up to 2 times per turn. 1 resource will build a wall. So any activated ability on these, you can only use 1. So if it's like a passive ability where it's, it says, if you lay down 3 cards and you get to draw a card, that doesn't count. What the activated abilities activated actions, I should say, is when you have to pay a resource cost or use wreckage. So we've got our 3 main buildings down. That's the research center. Now let's place an upgrade on the mech. Alright, so we've got this one here. And everything's just in the dialog box here. It says cost 4 wreckage or 1 red. Deals 2 damage to any target. Cost 1 any resource or 2 wreckage. So your initial cost is that 4 wreckage or 1 red. And then to do the activated ability, you pay that cost. Now, the question is, can you do, since this is attached to this mech, does that only give you 1 activated ability to do? No. Now you have 2. You are limited by each specific card. So you can do the upgrades ability and you can do the ability on your mech card. But if the mech card, for example, has 2, or if the upgrade card has 2 abilities, activated actions, then you can only do 1 on each card. And again, another side note to keep in mind, when it's not your turn, your responses will be either actions on mechs, action mech cards themselves, or upgrades. You cannot lay down regular mechs, you can't lay down buildings. Alright, now let's do an action mech. So action mechs, here's an example of one. You've got your cost up there, the name there. Name kind of works the same way with the regular mechs. And then most action mechs are just going to be 1/1s. So they're going to have 1 power and then 1 armor with no shields. But the reason to use these is because they have abilities that, or actions that come into effect as soon as you put it on the battlefield. So for example, this one says requires a level 1 research center. So like these usually do not require factories or barracks. And it says return any mech 3 resource cost or lower from any wreckage to your side on the battlefield. So, oh, that's pretty cool. Got that bad boy down. And since got that, you can take this, since this fits that cost, and put it on the battlefield there. Once you've laid down all the cards you want prior to combat and have given the opponent a chance to respond, keep in mind, anytime I've done any of these things, laid a card down, did an action that was listed on one of these, laying this down that, automatically makes an action happen, the opponent always has a chance to respond. Always. The player whose turn it is will declare combat by saying, I declare combat. The opponent has 1 final chance to respond. The player whose turn it is can respond to that response as always. Now the player whose turn it is can attack any building, base, or mech, and that includes all types of mechs, custom, action mechs, whatever. And this, or I'll show you this real quick. This is a custom mech. So this is kind of the one where you can use proxies. Any card will work. So any action that says they create a custom mech, you use one of these. And you can just throw that right. And its armor and power will depend on whatever the card says. So yeah, you can attack any building, base, or mech. And, custom and action mechs. They do this by placing their attacking mech on or right beside what they are attacking. Once the attacks phase has started, any action mechs built can't be used in combat. The I declare combat phrase starts the attack phase. So let me read that again. The I declare combat phrase starts the attack phase. Action mechs laid down after that phase, again, cannot be used in combat. So they, its ability will still work, but, once that a player whose turn it is says that, they can't be used specifically in the normal combat. Say it's like to do direct damage to a specific mech, that's still fine. But the actual combat phase, It's got to wait that out till the next round. After that comes the counterattack phase. So, well, here, I'll show you real quick. Like, say I'm attacking this mech. I'm going to put this down here. So these guys are battling right now. So we'll just have them there. Now we'll go on to the counterattack phase. On the counterattack phase, the defending player can choose to block something being attacked. This will force that particular mech that's attacking to instead attack the blocking mech, custom mech, or action mech. Or the defending, the one doing the counterattack, player can now choose to launch their own attack. This is a lot different than other games. On any applicable target they choose. And that includes all normal attackable targets, including bases and buildings. So even though it's not their turn, this is the counterattack phase. So we'll say that these guys aren't fighting for a second. And, let's keep them fighting. But let's throw another guy out of left field. So even though it's red's turn here, since blue is allowed to counterattack, they can attack whatever they want. They don't just have to defend. They can go straight to the base if they want in the counterattack phase. So we'll place that right there like that. And, this is going to look better once, you have a larger table or something like that. This is just a way to show you how to play it. And then prior to this phase, so in between the normal attack and the counterattack phase, the player on defense has a chance to respond by doing any actions that are on any cards. So the text that's on any cards, putting down an upgrade, or putting down an action mech. But again, the action mech can't actually fight in the battle if you're laying it down at this point. And finally, there's the block phase. This allows the player whose turn it is to use any mechs, all types, that are not currently attacking or defending to block any mechs, again, all types, that they choose. No attacks of any target can be done, only blocks. The defending player does not get to respond in this phase. So again, this is different than most games. Say we have this guy that's free. And I don't want that guy to be attacking my base. So now I'm going to block him. And now he's got to attack this instead. But during this phase, it's very important. Can only do blocks. And this is the players whose turn it is. They cannot then go out and say, I want at this phase to go and then attack the blue base. Can't do it. It's always going to be just for defense on the final round for the player whose turn it is. And again, after this, there's not a block phase for the defending player. Everything, all the type of blocks that they have to do, or, their own attacks, have to be done in that counterattack phase. So it's basically the players whose turn it is gets kind of two phases to themselves, where the defending player only gets one, if that makes sense. But that third phase, again, is just blocks. And just for mechs, action mechs, custom mechs that are not currently engaged in any fight already like that. This could already be engaged. It's just this one can't do anything because it's already in a fight. But since this guy was not, then he could come along and block for that dude if he so desires, or she, or they. So that's just going to kind of sum that up. I know it's a little different. It's just, think of it like this. You got your attack, you can attack anything you want. Counterattack for the defending player can attack anything they want. And can block anything they want. Third, just for blocks of using cards that are not already occupied. But they can block cards that are occupied on the opposing side. So I hopefully got that. I know it's kind of complicated, but that's kind of the main way the combat works. And then after the final blocks are in place, the damage is exchanged. The player whose turn it is decides which order the mechs are fighting first if facing multiple mechs. So say this bad boy is fighting these two guys. The player whose turn it is gets to decide, do I want to fight this guy or do I want to fight this guy? You know, you can switch it around. I want to fight this guy first and then this guy. Then the damage, a shield will absorb all damage done by one source. Then the depleted till that player's next turn. At the start of that player's turn, one shield will be regenerated. Armor will not be till repaired. If, for example, one mech has 10 power and is facing two mechs with no shields, but they each have 5 armor and 5 power. So imagine this guy's a 10 power, 10 no shields, 10 armor. These two guys, 5 power, 5 armor, both of them. That would result, if there's no shields on any of them, which is not the case, but we're just saying hypothetically, that all the cards would be destroyed. That would be the perfect amount for everything to be destroyed. Because this has 10, so it goes 5 there, and then once all the armor's gone from this, it goes on to the next one. Now, if this had a shield on it, then it would just absorb that extra power, and you would just take down the shield. And then that would regenerate on that player's next turn. But if there's not a shield, and again, it's a 5/5, then that has 5 armor. So the leftover 5 attack power goes to this one. And since this only has 5 armor and no shields, it's destroyed. So they're all destroyed. Once all the fighting is done, the opponent has one final chance to respond with an action mech, or an upgrade. Then the player whose turn it is can respond to that response, or if no response was done, can do an action themselves or build an action mech or apply an upgrade. No regular mechs or buildings can be built at this point. Then the next round begins. And again, anytime you do any sort of action, there's always the ability for the opponent to have a response at any point. When a custom mech or building is destroyed, it goes to the wreckage pile. So, these will go on their own wreckage pile. But let's just throw this bad boy right there. Oh, nope, that's an action mech, actually. So, we're going to imagine action mechs all go to the waste pile. But yeah, let's say this was the one that it was fighting. And that's 10-10, 5-5. So they're all dead. So this would go to the wreckage pile. Again, that one didn't because it's a custom or a action mech. Action mechs always go directly to the waste. Regular mechs, custom mechs, buildings go into the wreckage. Once the wreckage has been used, it also goes to the waste pile. Various cards can be used to make use of the wreckage points you see on buildings and mechs. All custom mechs are worth 1 wreckage point. Leftover wreckage points can be used till the end of whoever's turn it currently is. So say you have a certain action that uses only 3 wreckage points on there. And you had to use that card. Had to put it in the waste pile. But that extra, say it was worth 5 wreckage points that you got for using the points off of that, the wreckage points. Well, then you have an extra, say you use 3, and you have that 2 left over for any other, whatever use you would have for it. Either it be another action that would call upon it or need, that many points. Then you have that kind of in your bank. You lose those wreckage points on the next turn. Leftover wreckage points can be used till the end of whoever's turn it currently is. So if it's not your turn, it's still, it's just goes by whoever's turn it currently is, and then then the points go away. And this is this is the main way to play. It's just called the regular mode. The cards rotate out every 2 years. So basically, you have new cards every 2 years to keep it fresh, and that's how that works. Some of the other modes are draft. Players are given $100 fake money, or hey, you can use real money if you like, and must choose 3 copies of a specific card. They will also have 2 auctions for 2 copies of cards at the start of the game, and 1 card auctions at the end till they get 42 cards. The start of 1 card auctions are when players all have at least 38 cards. The max will be 42. So it's just, the same deck makeup pretty much. It's just you have $100 and you gotta, pick what you want. Big Mech Hunters. That's the 2 versus 2 mode. Each player has 2 bases and starts with 3 buildings. You gotta kill both their bases, and only 2 copies of each card are allowed. 64 cards in the main deck, 24 in the resource deck, and so you're basically fighting 2 people versus another 2. So it's your team versus the other team, and you can attack either opponent that you want to. That's up to you to choose. But the other guy can't attack other guy, gal, whatever, because they are on your team, and they also can attack whoever they want. The order goes, it will be decided by multiple coin flips, and it goes diagonally. So whoever's turn it is, then the person on the other side gets to go, and then directly in front of them, and then diagonal to them. Then there's also Forever Mode. That's the same as the regular, but the cards don't rotate, and there's less bannings. I hopefully will never have to ban a card, but I very much doubt that. Forever Mode's kind of like, you'll always be able to use the cards you got, unless something's just completely, like, I don't, see it, and it's just too powerful, and I just have to ban it. But hopefully that doesn't happen. All right, and some side notes. There's only 1 action per mech until your next turn. So just keep in mind, like I was saying, with these 2 cards, you can do your mechs action and you can do the upgrades action. But, if it's singular mech by itself, you can only do 1 action on it. But if there's, multiple that are activated, then by resource use, either these resources or your wreckage pile, you can only use 1 till your next turn of that particular card. And then anytime you also see, I think I mentioned this before, but an upgrade on a building, like, so say there's a requirement for a certain mech requires a level 1 building, but you've upgraded this to a level 2, a level 1 factory. That also applies. So you don't, it doesn't have to be specifically a level 1. Level 2 counts as the ability to build a mech if the mech's requirement is a level 1 factory. It being level 2 is still fine, but not the other way around. And then you'll always be able to inspect the cards. From this view, it looks like they're hard to read. They really aren't. I have bad eyes. I can read them fine. It's just, again, the focus on the webcam here is not that great. But, if you can read, a standard, most of these games, battle card games, cards, you can read these. Again, I have bad eyes. I can read it fine. Some specific card actions that you'll see that may not be explained on the cards. So there'll be like terms like one's evasive. So when you see that, it's not going to explain exactly what all that does on the card. You can reference either this video or you can look at the actual instructions to see. You'll eventually, if you play this enough, you'll just remember. But there's a few of those. So evasive, if you see that, that takes ship out of combat prior to the attack round. It can still be attacked by resource activated attacks or actions, but will not be able to be attack itself, or block. So it's just basically taking it out of the normal, combat. There's disperse. That's once a shield is down. This can force a played card to go back into its owner's hand. So you can do it for your own cards or for your team, your opponent's cards. Once the shield is down, you can activate that action, and they got to put it in their hand. Or maybe you want to save something of yours, and so you don't want it to die yet, and you want to put yours back in your own hand. You have that ability. Then there's Venom. Venom does 1 damage each round till healed. Can only be applied if the shield is down. It will not take it down a shield itself, but will do continuous damage to a mech even if the shield is up once applied. It can't be applied to bases or buildings. It can be applied multiple times if the action is done by multiple mechs or on different rounds. 1 repair of the mech removes the effect. So even if you have like 2 Venoms on a particular mech, then as long as it's repaired once, that removes both of the effects. But again, those effects stack. So if you have 2 poison or 2 venom, then that'll continue to tick down each round until it's healed. And even if you have a shield up, if your armor goes to 0, that mech is dead. It's destroyed. And then finally, there's sabotage. That makes any mech or building, unless a specific one is specified, unoperable till removed if done with an upgrade. So typically how you'll see that is on an upgrade, more of a downgrade really. So you apply that to any of the, to like your opponents. If you get its shield down, then you can, instead of worrying about having to destroy it, you can just apply that. And as long as they don't take that off, then that mech will be pretty much useless. Or building as well. All right, so again, the letter S, that's the amount of shields available displayed here. C is the resource cost. B is your blue resource. G is your green resource. R is your red resource. And an asterisk is any resource. But yeah, this has gone on pretty long. But yeah, I was just giving you a basic overview on how to play the game. Thank you very much. Oh, one quick side note. This is a wall card. Say a repair facility allows you to put a wall on either, your base, building, or a mech. What that does is that acts as a shield. So anytime it's destroyed, or anytime, like say this base was attacked, that acts as a shield, and as soon as it absorbs any damage, it goes to your waste pile. That's how walls work. Just basically like an extra shield, but they don't replenish. They once taken down, they're taken down for good. Thanks.